Hey guys, Nintendrew here. Video game box art is one of my favorite parts of collecting physical games. A game's box can serve not only as a tangible representation of the title itself, but also as a glimpse of the adventure to come. Developers put a lot of thought into how to best represent their game on the box, but even so, sometimes a little mistake can make it through the cracks. So, in this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 of the most embarrassing mistakes in video game box art. Let's get to it! First up on the list is Okami for Wii. For those who don't know, Okami is an action-adventure game published by Capcom and developed by Clover Studio, which was released in 2008 for the Wii. However, if you know anything about Okami, you probably know that it was originally published on the PS2 a couple years prior to being ported over to Nintendo's platform. When it first released on the PS2, the original box art looked like this, a pretty simple sepia-tone design with the game's logo and main character Amaterasu. However, when the game was ported to the Wii, the publisher decided to go in a slightly different direction, but someone in charge of the new cover made a pretty major blunder. As discovered by NeoGAF user Bob Digi, if you take a look at this portion of the box just to the right of Amaterasu's mouth, you'll notice a watermark from IGN. Apparently someone ripped a piece of promotional art from the gaming news website and incorporated it into their new marketing materials without fully covering up the logo. As for why they decided to rip a low-quality image from a third-party site instead of using the original art from in-studio, that mystery remains unsolved. But some have speculated that this might have been indicative of the tight time constraints these devs were working under to push the game out the door. Eventually the mistake was corrected for later prints of the game, but there are still plenty of copies of Okami out in the wild with the error, including the one in my collection. Next up, we have Resident Evil Revelations for the Nintendo 3DS. Resident Evil Revelations is of course a survival horror game, which first came out in 2012 for the Nintendo 3DS, and has since seen HD ports for PC, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Wii U, and Switch, pretty much every major console in the past decade. During its initial launch, however, the first batch of copies had an unfortunate spelling error on its spine. Instead of showing the intended title, the game's box read Resident Evil Revelitons. When asked about the error, Christian Svensson, one of Capcom's senior vice presidents, said, "I can't even tell you how many people looked at that package and approved it. I can't come up with an excuse for it. It just happened." And he went on to joke, "There are only about 90,000 units that have the misprint. If you've got it and it's shrink-wrapped, that's a new special edition. That's our new strategy." Once again, this issue was fixed in a later version, but in this case the original box art featuring the misprint is a lot harder to come by, and tends to fetch much higher prices on secondhand sites like eBay. At number 3, we've got Mario Kart Double Dash for the Nintendo GameCube. Yep, here's one from Nintendo themselves, and this might be the most notorious mistake on the list. Well, I don't need to tell you what this game is, it's Mario Kart, so let's get right to the issue. Taking a look at the game's box art, at first glance everything looks normal. But if you take a closer look, at the right side of the scene, you'll notice that the L on Luigi's cap is mirrored. There's been a lot of speculation about how this might have happened. It's possible that the artwork was originally intended to face the other way, in which case the only other asymmetrical element would have been the DK logo on Donkey Kong's barrel cart. This may have been a quick edit in post after the designers were given final 3D renders for each character, meaning that Double Dash's box art could have originally been planned to look like this. Either way, this error is present in every piece of official artwork using these renders. As a side note, some perceptive gamers have noticed that Mario Kart 8 for Wii U also has an interesting problem with its box art. If you look closely, you'll notice that every character is driving toward the viewer, despite the fact that the track loops around and changes direction in the background of the scene. Either Mario and Peach are driving backwards, or everyone else is. You might be able to chalk this up to a creative decision, but either way, it's an interesting tidbit. Next up is a true classic for the Nintendo 64, Superman. All joking aside, Superman: The New Superman Adventures, or as it's colloquially known, Superman 64, is a notoriously terrible game for the console, and is often touted as one of the worst video games of all time. It should be no surprise then that the quality assurance that went into the game's final box art was no better than that of the game itself. If you were to examine the back of the box, you'd notice that the game's subtitle has a glaring issue. Right there in plain view on the game's logo, the subtitle reads, "The New Superman Adventures." In fact, this is the case on almost every side of the box except the front, which inexplicably doesn't feature the logo at all. If you'd like to see more on this abysmal piece of garbage, here's another video in which I invited Nathaniel Bandy to check out some of the worst games of all time with me, so you can follow the link in the top right hand corner if you'd like to delight in our misery. And finally, the last game on our list is Doom for the Sega Genesis 32X. Doom is another one of those ubiquitous titles which really needs no introduction. Since its initial launch, Doom has seen ports for pretty much every console under the sun, and the Sega Genesis 32X attachment is no exception. But for such a high-profile title, this mistake in particular is especially puzzling, and is sure to be the frustration of game collectors across the world. Let's take a quick look at the game's spine. Can you see the problem? Well, at first glance the issue isn't very apparent, but try to fit this one in with the others on a shelf and you'll be met with this horror. In contrast with the vast majority of the system's library, on this title the 32X logo is flipped 180 degrees. What an eyesore. As far as I'm aware, Doom is the only game in the system's library which features this misprint. But if anyone at home knows of any other titles I might have missed, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, if you did enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing to Nintendrew for all sorts of cool gaming content, and make sure to share it with any friends who might find it interesting. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, thanks again for watching and for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you like this one, here are 2 more videos you might like as well. As always, if you like what I do and would like to help out the channel, I've got a link to my Patreon on the right side of your screen. And otherwise, I hope you look forward to the next one. Take care!